and welcome to GenFriends. I'm your host, Sherry Hudson-Passy from Carolina Girl Genealogy. An amazing panel, as always. We've got Jenny Hawran with us tonight. Hawran with us
She
tonight.
did it. Did she get it right?
She did.
One of these days I'll say it without laughing, but it's just one of those things, right? So I'm herding cats genealogy. And this is like having me be your host on here is like herding cats. So I'm sorry.
Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. We've got Shelley Murphy, our family tree girl. Hey, Shelley.
Howdy there, everybody. Glad to be here tonight.
So glad you're here too, because I know you're going to have a lot to say about tonight's topics. And we've got Melissa Barker, our archive lady. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. We are kicking off season 10 of Finding Your Roots. And so y'all know that we watch the genealogy TV shows, and then we like to kind of talk about them and what happened and what kind of records were used and how did they find the stories and things like that. So maybe to help you as you're doing your research to kind of understand where things were coming from. And it's a lot of hours of research, It took them hours and hours and hours to do this, and many people are on the team. So it looks so easy. And those of you who have done a lot of research know that it can be quite difficult to get into some of these records and find this information. So who do you guys want to start with? Do you want to start with Alanis Morrisett, or would you like to start?
Sure.
You want to start with
Alanis is good.
And
Okay.
I want to make one comment on that. When you're talking about, and there's somewhere I read on finding your roots, sometimes I remember Dr. Gates saying something or somebody about a year to 2 years, they're working on these projects on these families. Y'all remember that? And I can't bring it in tune who it was,
Right, but it does. It takes a
maybe
long time.
Pharrell. Was it the Pharrell show?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
but
just
made that comment. Yeah.
Right. It does. It takes a long time. And I think
Does.
sometimes people think that, yes, you can go get that easy fruit, from Ancestry and Family Search, those easy records. But when you really get into trying to find stories and going back generations, sometimes the records aren't available and you really have to dig in places where you hadn't thought about digging before. And so they did have a couple of different record groups that I thought were very interesting. So let's start with her maternal line, Alanis Morissette's maternal line. So she is from a Hungarian family who survived the Holocaust. And what I thought was interesting is she didn't even know that her family lines were Jewish until she was in her 20s.
That's
28.
crazy. I know.
Yeah. Just
And it was like, why
they had their
not?
Jewish ancestry.
yeah, and I can't say that I blame them,
No.
And the
When a
word
race of people have been through what they've been through, it's like she said, it's in their bones.
right.
And it just, I don't know how many Jewish families and people I've talked to that have said pretty much the same thing, or they don't talk about it, or they don't follow their Judaism because of that.
Yeah,
I guess
they're afraid of what people will say or do. Yeah, and you can't blame them. But to learn that in your 20s must have been just shocking for her to know that that was part of her heritage. But what I thought was really interesting is that they were in Hungary and they had the story of her grandfather and his two brothers. And the story was that the two brothers were taken into the battalion to go fight. And they went into Russia and they never really heard from them again. And they just didn't really know what happened to them. But I thought what was really interesting is, and we've talked about this before on the show, they actually found a record. It was a memoir that somebody else that was in that battalion had written. And so it didn't mention those two brothers, but they got the stories
about the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's important to read other people's diaries in the community. Look at other people's scrapbooks, things that they have produced that are, if you can't find something in an archive or for a record for your ancestor, look for people who are in the same community, because they may not mention your ancestor, but it will mention the major events and what was
Mhm.
experienced in the community.
Right, the experience of it, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'll add that pension records, they're priceless.
Yeah.
And it might
Anything
not
like that.
be with
Yeah.
the same theme that Melissa's saying. Pension records might not, well, the community will be the regiment or the group that.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Whatever that
Yeah.
they're in. And I hate saying it this way, but you want to look at as many that you can find that are
Exactly.
in that same
Right.
group,
Yep.
because you're going to hear that experience and
Yeah.
so forth, and you just might see somebody else's name in there.
This is
And
true. That's very,
there's a
very
lot
true. So
with,
always.
USCT pension records,
Yeah.
they're mentioning names all the time. And I think
Mhm.
even Revolutionary War ones,
Right.
I'm following the trails. So looking at that community is
Mhm.
just critical, whatever you call that community. It could be your church,
Right.
it could be who's in
Right.
the neighborhood.
I
And
don't know. Did you guys catch where they got this memoir from? I didn't
don't
catch it. So
know.
I'm assuming it was
No.
probably some archives and their manuscript collection, because that's usually where you find that type of thing. So if you're
Yes.
thinking to yourself, well, where would I find something like that about my ancestor? I would go to the archives, to the manuscript collections, to see what kind of journals, memoirs, papers that people have written about and an event that you're pretty confident that your ancestor may have been involved in.
But
Melissa,
you
were you going to say something? Looked like you were going to say something there for a minute.
oh, sorry. Go
It's
ahead.
okay.
I'm just gonna say that that you should look for records anywhere and everywhere.
That's
Being an
true.
archivist, I love to do online research just as much as anybody else, and there is so much online and coming online every day. But I can tell you that there is the majority of the records are still sitting on shelves in
Oh,
archives. And so
yes.
we really need to, and if you think, well, I can't travel. Well, you know what? These places are very well versed now of emailing and calling and even talking
Yes.
to them through social media. They'll work with you. And so reach out to them
Exactly. Yeah.
and find out what
Yeah.
they've got.
And I want to make a couple points here. Number one, house repository. I don't care who you're looking for, when and where. You got to check at home first and in your family.
Mhm.
Those aunties, uncles, grandmas, they got boxes and things. They're probably the biggest untapped source of information for genealogists, because we want
Right.
to go to the archives and things. But a lot of that stuff is under the bed in that box you were told not to miss.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And the other thing is, and this is a big push we have with Maggie and stuff, and we've got a course just specifically, and I'm coming back to you again, Melissa, is the community research. And as we research online, you can see the book that was scanned in. That book was not made online at Family Search or Ancestry. So I want people to hear, especially the newbies, that book was made at the local level in that community. Those
Mhm.
companies had to go and copy that, scan it, whatever you want to call it, whenever. And so
Exactly.
tap into those local resources first,
Mhm.
libraries,
Yep.
historical societies, and after that, house repository within the family. I think that's so critical. And we see this, but they might not know where the root came from. And I say,
Right.
start at home first, exhaust
Yep.
the local area. So that's
Mm.
my point there.
Yeah. You know what else I thought was fascinating is that her grandfather went to the Red Cross archives. I mean,
Yes.
that's an I think we've heard about that once or twice on the show before, but that always, like, the Red Cross archives. I don't know that I'd even think about going to the Red Cross archives, but he was looking for his brothers, you know?
They were
So,
everywhere overseas and local
yeah.
on the military bases.
So
and
have any of
assignments.
you ever used those? I'm just curious. Have you used them, Shelley?
No.
Yes.
So how do you
Wow.
Well,
how
World
do you
War II.
access them? Where do you go to access them?
I went to, well, they've got a section on the Red Cross, redcross.org, and you can go
Okay.
through on the historical society. I used it with World War II, but I'm
Okay.
a Red Cross volunteer trainer
Okay.
and everything. That's the only way I knew about that, except when my brother during Vietnam
Hmm.
had to go through Red Cross. When he was
Okay.
missing in action, that's who we were dealing with.
Right,
And,
exactly.
and so that's how I got committed into serving Red Cross as a
So
trainer.
they have an archives that they will allow people to, or they will search for you?
Well, you
or-
can request
Okay.
what you want. And I'll tell
Fabulous.
you what, I'll get some more info and share it. And
Okay,
even
we'll
if
put
we
it,
can get someone to come on, I
oh,
have a
that would be cool.
picture. I've got a picture of the World War II cousin, and he's speaking in his BBC radio, but it was a social over in England, World War II, and he was being interviewed on BBC,
Mhm.
but there was a Red Cross social that was going on.
Oh,
And
that's
this
neat.
is just a few days before he was killed in action.
Oh,
Stuff.
oh.
And again, that's what got that rolling.
Mhm,
Was this
mhm.
picture of him and the mic, and I'm thought, what is this guy doing?
Well,
with
maybe
the-
maybe we can get a link to that too, and I can add it to
Yeah.
our, yeah, that would be really cool to,
Yeah, I'll look that
a lot
up
of people
and
wouldn't think
bring-
about that. I know I wouldn't have thought about that. So I thought that was
Well, if you
So-
were military, you should
Maybe, yeah,
know
yeah.
Red Cross.
Well, yes, if I had somebody that was hurt and came back
Yeah.
or something, but are they going to have people
The
that died?
families, the soldiers, the active duty people know in order to get home if somebody's sick.
Okay, I
you
see what you're
have to
saying.
go
All
through
my
Red
soldiers,
Cross.
all my people either died in the war or just came home, served and retired and didn't need the
Yeah.
Red Cross. So I wouldn't have thought to look at that. But so that's really, sometimes when we watch these shows, that's one good thing that we can get from them, or things we never thought about,
Right, right.
things that we never thought about
It'd be a
looking.
good opportunity to share that information.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just more familiar with World War II,
Okay.
but they did it, all of them.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah.
get all the way back to Miss Clara.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
it's true. Well, they never did find out anything because the Red Cross didn't have anything about his brothers. But what
Mhm.
they did was they were able to, and I cannot remember, what is the name of that Holocaust memorial where people put the
Museum
testimonies in it? Do you guys remember what it?
No, and I was thinking about it before I came on. I'm like, I
Okay.
should go back and look at it
And
and see
look,
what, write it
Called the
down.
World Holocaust Remembrance Center.
Thank you,
Thank
Melissa.
you. I knew
Sneeze.
she would know it.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate
We,
that.
we let you step aside so you could cough.
And then she came back.
Yes.
She came
Yeah.
back with the
And what's
answer.
interesting about those records that they found is that they were not submitted to the museum by family members or anything like
Yeah.
that, by a friend who was
Yeah.
a witness
Yeah.
to what
Yeah,
happened.
so right, and
And so
so
we're grateful to those people who did that, because there's a lot of records in that museum
yeah,
from those who witnessed.
Yeah.
right, and so that serves really as a testimony of their death, and so
Right.
family members seeing that can have that closure, and they know what happened to them, and they
Yeah.
know they've passed away, and that type of thing. So and I know we've seen that on the show before, and it just wouldn't click. I could not for the life of me remember the name of it. It's a
And
beautiful.
anyone who has Jewish records or remembrances or something can contact them, and you
Mhm.
can share what you have with them.
Mm.
Oh,
That's
that's
amazing.
wonderful. Maybe we should put the
That
link to
is
that
good.
on
But
too. Yeah, we should put the link to that on there
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah.
and
But
then they touch.
there's-
Oh, go ahead.
I
Go,
was
Shelley.
gonna say, not knowing that she was Jewish, and again, I think of the perspective and all of that went on until she was in their 20s. But I
Mhm.
also think that, and as me that research African American, I am African American, but I think the same thing happens in our families as well, and that's about slavery. Because growing up, I didn't hear about it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And then Mama's starting to tell these stories, and she says her grandmama told her that her
Right.
dad was a slave, and it was like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Almost like Alana saying this at 20, but I think there's family secrets. And
Yes. And
I
everybody's
know
family.
this
Yeah.
lady in the other room that's 93 has secrets she's still not telling.
Not telling
she
you,
was
yes.
told not to tell.
Because
as
she was
a
told not to
child.
tell.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think that
Absolutely.
happens in all different cultures and things.
Yeah.
These horrible things that happen
Mhm.
don't all come down generations,
Exactly.
things like that. So I
Well,
want to
luckily,
come back.
Yes, luckily for her maternal line, they left as
Yeah.
Hungary was invaded by the Russians. Her
Mm.
father and her grandparents and Alanis's mother at age 6
Six.
escaped. They
Mm.
escaped, and so they ended up in Canada. So,
Yeah.
you know, um, so she's lucky. We're lucky to have her, she's
Yes.
lucky to be alive
Well,
because of
that
the
they made it
braveness.
out.
Yeah, the
Right.
braveness.
Now
And you think
live to
about,
tell that story.
right, you think about all those family stories of people, the only reason they have descendants is somebody got
Made it.
out. Somebody
Mhm.
got out because they said there was 500,000 people who died in Hungary.
Mhm.
Over 500,000 people who died just because of their religion, it's just horrible.
Mm.
Her father's, let's go ahead and finish up with her. I liked her paternal, was there anything, I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, it was a newspaper article. So they get to Canada and Alanis's mom marries, and right after she's born, her grandfather and her great grandmother die in a car wreck. I mean, they
Right.
made it all the
Yep.
way through
That's
the war. They
That
get to
was
Canada and they die in a car wreck. I mean, really? But I mean, that really touched her as I found the newspaper article so she could really read the story. There's
Yeah.
one thing about hearing it, but then actually reading the newspaper article about what happened.
And that was from that time.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's significant too. The article
Yes.
was written,
Yeah.
we get newspaper stuff. And again, people will do this, we're looking back into the whatever we can find now, but the next generations after us are going to be doing the same thing on what's
Exactly.
happening right now. So we're
Mhm.
making
Exactly.
history now too. So it's almost like history's not the past.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
exactly.
yeah.
They
Something
did
else
her
that's
paper
happening.
trail.
Well,
Go
something else
ahead.
that's
Go ahead,
happening
Melissa.
right now too is the fact that they talked about that her ancestors go back to the area which is Ukraine.
Yes, I
Mhm.
was
And we
just gonna
all
say that. Thank
know
you,
that
Melissa.
right now Ukraine is embattled in a war and
Right.
their records are suffering. Like
Oh,
any country's
exactly.
records suffer during wartime,
Right.
during upheaval of any kind. And
Yes.
so they were very fortunate to find records for her family in the Ukraine
Mm-hmm.
because of that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention about a record source that they talked about with Alanis is the fact that they found a book.
Yeah.
Now, many genealogists, especially beginning, intermediate, the ones who've been coming along in the last, I want to say 10 years,
Years.
I wonder if they look in books anymore. I
Mhm.
mean, and I'm not talking
Versus
about,
just online.
yeah, because not all books have been digitized and are online. They're still sitting on the shelves at libraries and archives.
Exactly.
So they found a book called The Pioneers of the Upper Ottawa, and it was published in
Yeah.
1906. Now, is
Yes.
everything in that book correct? Probably not.
Now
But
we're
it,
moving over to her, we're moving over to her paternal side for this
right,
one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
but
Yes.
it's something to go on. It's kind of like online
Yeah.
trees. You don't just count them, you look at them, you
Yeah.
research them, you find your own sources and stuff. But we've got to continue to still look at those books.
Mhm.
Yes.
Exactly. This is the book that had the poem in it that was turned to the song too, right? Where her
Yeah,
I think
um
yeah.
so.
yeah, so she she or I'm trying to think, it was her great grandfather named James. Anyway, James is mentioned uh in this poem that was then turned into a folk song. He decided he and his buddies were going to go and ride the rapids right down the falls, right? And he's the only one that made it out. And so it
Well, before
became,
that, we find out that
sorry,
they had shown some occupational records.
that's true. That's true.
Remember?
He
Another
was a,
record set right there.
Right.
Yes,
that's right. Another record set. Yes,
yeah,
it was the raft making so that they could run the,
Mhm.
the
yes,
logs down.
right.
Mhm.
It's him being on the river. And
That's why he
then
was there. Yeah.
that's why he was there. And that's why he decided that they would go and they would ride down the rapids and go down the falls. Not the smartest idea in the world, but he's the only one that survived. But how fun for her to see this, a musician as she is, and she read the lyrics and she said, I could probably do something
I can
with
work with this. Yeah.
I could do something.
that. So
But
I
it was
find it,
also amazing that she was 48 years old. And when
yeah,
I think of her as a singer, I'm still seeing that young kid.
At 20,
And this
yeah.
was a grown woman at 48 years old.
Finding
And,
all
and
this
that
stuff
was
out, yeah.
hard to adjust. And it
Yeah.
comes to these movie stars, you know, we're
Yeah.
seeing all this glamour and all this stuff, but she wasn't that little teen idol, you know, per
Yeah,
se and stuff.
You know,
So
another thing that got me about this is she was talking about the place where he was working was called Hull and had the river right there. And she said, I looked at property there. I am drawn to this
Yes.
place. I
Oh,
love
that's
that
right.
river, and I had no
Well, if you
idea.
remember at the beginning of her telling her story, she said she was drawn to Judaism before she
Yes.
even knew she was a
Yes.
Yeah.
Jew.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, you think about those things in yourself, you know,
Yeah.
and you can find those if you pay attention. I think you can also
Oh,
see
yes.
those
Some
coincidences, those
Yeah.
connections, whatever, as you're
Exactly.
researching your history. And that's why I
Mhm.
think it's important to not only find the birth, marriage, and death records, look
Mhm.
for everything
Oh,
because,
yeah.
you know, as much as you know about yourself, you're comfortable in yourself or whatever, I think the more you find out about your ancestors, the more you
Yeah.
really get to know your
Yourself.
family,
Yeah.
yourself, you know,
Yeah.
and you can actually kind of say, oh, okay, well, that's why I'm the way I
That's
am.
why I do
Mhm,
that.
mhm,
And that's
Yeah.
why I do that. Yeah, I think that's great. They also, what about the Morissette Manor up on the island that they
That was awesome.
from the
They asked her,
1600s?
are you going to go visit? Well, yeah, she said.
Definitely.
It's
Definitely.
still there. How many of us still have there's a family home that we know about that's still there, you know?
I
I
have
know
one.
one or two. I've got one or two.
I've got one
Mhm.
that's from that was built, a part of it was built in the 1600s. It's still
Uh-huh.
there up
Oh,
in,
Yeah.
cool.
I want to say Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
My
just
my
went,
patriot for the
Fun.
DAR's house.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I
fun.
just went, my daughter and I, to the house. It was built 1782.
I saw
First,
those
they
pictures. Yeah.
documented, yeah, the
Cool.
1733, but the person that owns it now, they all had the wood tested and all, whatever the
Oh,
test
yeah.
is,
Yeah.
because they were renovating it, restoring it. So the original part of the house was done, and it's called Findowry. This is why I was in Scotland, because he
Yes.
came from Findowry and then
Yeah.
comes into Virginia. But what they did in the renovation, which to me was very fascinating, was they went to when they got all those tests back, that's what they renovated back with. They got
Oh,
the same
that's
wood, the
great.
same kind
Yeah.
of paint, the same
Oh,
everything
cool.
was still existing. And so that original part of the house is
Mm-hmm.
still the same. And it is a 2-room house up top.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, just the living room and the little kitchen area. They had
Yeah.
12 kids.
Yeah. Yep.
12 kids.
3 in a bed, 4 in a bed.
And
Exactly.
well, you had to have floor. They might not have
Yeah.
had beds. I
They might
don't
not
know.
have- Just,
Yeah.
yeah, stuff on the floor. You
Yeah.
know what I loved about what she said at the end? She said all these people were lost, but they're not lost
Not
anymore.
anymore.
Yeah.
Names are they're being remembered, you know,
Mhm.
and she can share them with her family.
With her.
And yeah, they're not lost anymore. They can do field trips to their to their house on the island.
Ancestral home.
Yeah. And all the ride down the river, you know, don't go over the
Mhm.
falls, but ride down the river and all those kind of things. And you know, and they came from France. So now she knows, you know, she's got that connection in France as well. They
That
also
was her
did
dad's side, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
it was her
Yes.
dad's
Her
side.
I
dad,
think it
yeah,
was
this is
dad's.
Okay.
Yeah. The
yeah, because
Morissette side.
mom was from Hungary.
Yeah.
And then of course they did the DNA to see who she was
Yeah.
connected to from anybody else on the series. And it was Claire Danes, whom she says is a really good friend of hers. So she was thrilled.
That was cool.
Funny.
She was thrilled. I think it's fun when it's somebody that they know well, you
Mhm.
know. I mean, it's like when we do that, you know, relatives around me and stuff when we're at conferences and things, and we see that our friends are connected somehow to us.
Yeah.
It's so much fun, right? So
Yeah.
it's fun for them to do that too. Let's move on to our second singer, who is Cierra, and she is sorry, what about
How
what were
do
you
you
gonna
guys like the grouping of the like guest?
oh
I
it was
mean,
fun.
does
Yeah.
it Do you guys like that?
You
Like
singers?
all actors or musicians or
I
chefs?
guess they're just
The
trying to get a
connection I
theme.
saw this time was the fact that it was slavery and Jewish.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
That is a
Two
good-
races that have been abused in every way, shape, or form
and
Right.
throughout
still
our history.
happens.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's where I saw the connection with this
Instead of
one.
two
That's
singers.
interesting. And I didn't see that way, but just two musicians.
Mhm.
But I don't even remember after all these seasons, was there ever opposite, two different
Yeah.
like people? I just don't remember.
They usually do some type of grouping with the
And
people,
that-
just to have a theme for the show.
Yeah.
So whether it's occupations or whether it's similar hardships or those types of things, they
Mhm.
seem to they try to do some kind of grouping, some kind of theme for the show.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, and it was just
Yeah.
interesting to see. I mean, they both had success when they were so young. I mean,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I mean, that was, and they were both very determined kind of
Yeah.
people. And so I like it when they group it. It's just,
Yeah.
I
I'll be
think it's-
excited to see the
I think it's great.
regular
Yeah.
people
So the regular people, because they're going to do that this season.
at
they
the
say.
end of the season. Yeah.
Right. So let's start on her paternal line. They went back to a third great grandfather named Aaron. If I could read my Gardner. And they said, of course, the time period he would have been born into slavery. And the record they used to pull out information for him, one of the records was an 1866 labor contract. And we know that came from, they didn't mention it, but the Freedmen's Bureau.
And why didn't they mention that?
And why didn't they mention
Gates.
it? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come on, Gates. It's such a critical record collection, but
It
not
is.
only for blacks, but whites as well.
Exactly.
I was going to mention
Looked in-
that, Shelley. Thank you for saying that because my husband has sharecroppers in his ancestry, and they had the
Yes.
same contracts.
Exactly.
You know,
So did
and-
my
Refugees
ancestors.
are the whites in
Yes.
that bureau.
And
They're
I
the
wanted to,
whites.
yeah, I thought it was important that we mention, especially for genealogists out there that are looking at these records going, oh, well, I have white ancestors, so I don't need to look there. And
Yes,
Shelley, you have taught us so much about the Freedmen's Bureau and that we really need to look there. So yes,
Yeah.
if you have sharecroppers in your ancestry,
Yep.
you really need to look
And
for
that's
these
where you're
labor
seeing it.
contracts.
And we're reading through these labor contracts, and it's like we're seeing it right there. Oh, you
Yeah.
plant this amount, you got to give us this amount and stuff. But one
Yeah.
other last thing I'll say about that is don't forget there's pre-bureau records.
Yeah. Yeah.
Louisiana, Mississippi, and Fort Monroe, Virginia. And there's another record set because there's different levels. And the field office is what we look at. That's on Family Search and
Yes.
Ancestry. But you got the state level, and then you got headquarters.
Yes. Exactly.
And so
You got to
people-
look everywhere.
You got to look. It's 3.5 million records. But those
Well,
pre-bureau
Shelley-
records are before the war.
I was going to ask you this question.
Yeah.
So they found her ancestor had signed a contract for a William Zimmerman. And so they kind of leapt to, well, he must have been the slave owner. And he was
that on that labor contract?
there. Yes, that's the name of the guy on the labor contract that said he would work so many hours for him. He would get some food from that. And of course, he would get profit at the end, which they never did because they never came up with a profit, right? They
No,
cooked
it's
the
not
books.
designed for a
Yeah,
profit.
no.
No, cooked the books, so they never got a profit. But what is your experience with these labor contracts? Are they normally?
The majority of the ones that I look at are in Virginia because of the work with UVA. And so, and I'll say this too, 90% of who I research is first name only. So I
Okay.
have to rely on everything prior to 1870.
Okay.
So that 1870 myth is a myth
Yeah,
because
yeah.
people are finding their people. And this is a prime example in labor contracts. And that's before 1870 federal population census.
What is your feeling about saying though that they must have been working for their slave owner?
Well, I don't think people should say that, number one. And
I
they
didn't think
shouldn't,
you did.
but they should have
A
that
clue.
question and
Yeah.
say, what is the connection?
Yeah,
between Mr. Zimmerman and whoever,
if
or
any,
the
right.
people that are listed, what is the connection?
Their connections.
Because
yes.
even on the basic census, just because we see a man and a woman, we're automatically saying that's a husband and a wife. It
That's
could
right.
be a brother and a sister.
Yeah, yeah.
And you just don't know, but that's an assumption. And
Yeah.
and I was on the phone with a couple yesterday, cousins, and we're trying to find some stuff, and it was an automatic. Well, that's husband, that's mama, that's daddy. I said,
no.
well, not yet. Let's go
Yeah.
a little bit further and let's make sure that's not brother and sister. And then
Yeah.
the 80-year-old that was in the house, there was the assumption that that was the wife because she had a different surname, and it was the husband, but she had remarried.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
again,
So it's all assumption.
so
We've
we're
got to take things
exhausted.
as we've got to take
Yeah.
things as clues and see where that leads
Take
us.
them as clues.
He could have gone down the street because that guy down the street was offering a great offer that he thought it was a great offer. His former slave owner may not have been doing that. They could have lost
Might
everything.
not have.
Yeah,
And
and so
another
that's
thing,
what I'm saying. People assume too much, I think.
and the assumptions, I'm not going to say they're bad, but make assumptions, the tips or the leads that you need to answer to or respond
Right.
to.
Exactly.
And so in the labor contracts in the area where I'm working in Virginia, 9 times out of 10, it is the former slaveholder.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we've been able to find the supporting documentation
Okay.
to support that. And it might mean that we got to go to Everybody's Dead and get that estate settlement and see the
Right.
names of the slaves and who they got, I'm going
Right.
to say
Right.
divvied out to, and then going back.
Okay.
So
it
it's
takes
almost
much more. It takes much more than just saying
Yeah,
he
you can't
worked for
just
that
look
guy
at it.
right after the war. Exactly. And then
And
of
if-
course your favorites, they jump to the slave schedule.
I was gonna say, don't. Yeah, that's critical. People
They went to
hear
William
me.
Zimmerman's slave schedule because they were assuming that he was the slave owner. So they went to see if he had enslaved listed in his property.
And of course, there ain't that many that didn't, and if you're looking throughout the South and you hear a lot of those guests say, well, I figured in the South there was always that chance my family, depending on who it is, we're either enslaved or they're the slaveholding family. But when people are looking at these slave schedules, because the census is taken on one day, during say a 2 or 3 month period, just because you got a female that's 10 years old and the ancestor you're looking for where you got an approximate birth date or a birth year and they're going to be about 10 years old, that doesn't mean that is them on that slave schedule. Because that time frame, buying and selling and renting
I was just going to say renting out. Yep.
And so it's good to think that let me question this. And what do you do if you got 3 females and there's 8, 9, and 10, and you're looking for the 10-year-old? I would sit there and say, well, I got to find out who these 3 girls are and see if that connects. Go further, go back, whichever way it is.
Go look at wills, if you can find
everything.
Everything you can find on that enslaver to see if you can connect. And if you can't, start spreading out to the other enslavers in the area.
But you cannot sit there. Now, I'm going to give a shout out to Renata Yarborough Sanders and folks that are members at Legacy Family Tree webinar.
Let's put that link. I'm going to put that link in the, I'll put that link.
Great. For people that are members will be able to see that, where she was able and showed how she did it was to take that age, a female and an age and Black on a slave schedule and how you work it to determine who that was. Based on all these other factors.
For people that, and
I was disappointed they didn't. I was disappointed they didn't show any of that. Like they kind of assumed. And I was just like, what? How did we get here? How are you saying that this is definitely her people? And kind of threw me,
And And I don't want to blame Dr. Gates on this because he's reading from a script, but I am appealing to the writers and the ones that are giving him the script to please just ask one of us. And I know you guys are skilled, but you're given so many, and we're up here trying to clean this up. And how bad if I sit there and say to Cheri and say, Cheri, well, I'm sorry, that 10-year-old might not be your ancestor.
Yeah.
Now you're looking at me and said, but that's what they said. No. Don't break your heart and don't set yourself up. And it's not, you want to find out, you want to eliminate that person to see if it is your person.
Exactly.
So in other words, get them, work all the ways that it's not them.
Find all the records you can.
Yes. To prove that it's not. And hopefully other things are out there. And just for the audience, there's 8 or 9 counties in the United States in different states that actually the enumerator or the census taker did not follow the instructions.
Right.
They wrote down the names of the slaves.
Yep.
And there's just, and again, Anita Hill's segment was one of them in that county where her folks were. Remember when?
Of course, it didn't happen in any of the counties that I research in.
None of the counties I'm researching either.
Of course,
but what Shelley, County, Florida was, and I lived next door to that when I was down in Tallahassee. So, but no.
There's a term that they used with Cierra's that I would like for Shelley or someone to elaborate on, because I don't think they elaborated on it enough.
What was that?
They used the term the Great Migration.
Oh.
And as genealogists, we research our migrating ancestors all the time, but this had a specific meaning. Yep. And so we'd like for
Isabel Wilkerson's
to talk
book
about that just a minute. Because I don't think the show went into enough detail. I know it's only an hour show, but when you hear something like the Great Migration, genealogists maybe think, okay, well, they just migrated. No, it was more than that.
No, it's way more than that. It was a great migration of the African-American population, the Blacks, to the north, to New York, to Ohio,
Chicago, Michigan, Indiana, jobs.
And then onward to the west. So that's what the migration is. Finally getting out of the South, those that could. So,
but it's now reversing,
and they're coming back.
So now you've got the people that had strong lineages back in the South, and their family migrated up to the north, and now they are coming back, and some of them are coming back to family land.
Exactly, because they've got that land.
And Isabel Wilkerson's book is one of the best ones I've seen just in my personal stuff. And The Warmth of Other Suns is the name of it. And this is what she's talking about. But Melissa, that actually happened. We're talking about in the 1900s. We're not talking about right after slavery.
No.
Talking about the 1920s and the right after World War I, and then another massive right after World War II. So because so that should also direct people to the records because of the time frame. And people were moving, but what records were available, what was taken? Because if you're doing, say, around Civil War era time, you're looking at different records than what you're going to see in the 1900s. So well, you had talked about looking at the records and ruling things out. Well, on her maternal line, we had a problem with somebody being ruled out. So I thought that was very interesting. They went back to her great grandparents, Lula and Willie Head, and they showed them on the census in Georgia. And one of the sons named was Nathan. But when they did the DNA, and we got to see CC Moore there briefly. Yes. So she's found lots of connections with Willie, but not to Nathan, or was it Nathan and not to Willie? Am I saying it backwards? One or the other, but they didn't connect. So in other words, we had a problem with who the father was. Which is genealogy 101.
Exactly.
Surnames really don't mean nothing. You gotta stop always researching a surname. And I'm not saying just African American. I'm saying genealogy 101. Go for that. And Melissa, here we come. Go to that community first and go for that location in that area first, and then tapping around, and looking at where people are at and who is around them. So automatically I thought, oh, they took the head surname, and I was done with it. I had
because they were the head, they were the heads, right? The last name was heads. And it was Nathan was not William's biological father.
No,
he wasn't.
But he had the last name Head.
But here's why. They were all living in one household for quite a while. They were all living in one household for quite a while. So they had the white family and then they had the black family.
Yeah.
All living in the same household. So they had that same last name.
Yep.
And then so Willie gets married to a lady named Emily. Right? So Emily would have had the son, but by somebody
in that house.
Somebody, but then they couldn't figure out how on earth, because they ended up in different parts of Georgia and different.
They were in neighboring counties, but they were in different counties.
Exactly, in neighboring counties. So what can you guys remember which record proved that there was a connection? It was a deed. It was a deed.
It was a mortgage deed. There are deeds and then there are mortgage deeds.
Right.
They're two different. But that's what they used, was a mortgage deed. And I suspect that they used more than that, but that was all they got on film.
Yes.
So that was
it proved how he could get to Emily. It proved how they could get together. Yeah. And how she could have a child with the white brother and not her husband, is because they could get together like that. And like they said, was it consensual? They don't know. They wanted to think it was consensual.
We weren't there.
But we weren't there.
We weren't there. And I think when I watched that particular part, I wondered what Dr. Gates's response would have been if Cierra's response, instead of saying, "Oh, I think it was consensual," to, "Oh, I don't think it was consensual." It's like he would have to have had a response for either or, whatever she said.
But I wish he would have went a little bit further in depth. And I think that and I'm saying this, I think they lacked a bit on her family and her research compared to what they did on Atlantis's. And I think they could have came out with a little more. And I almost want to go back and watch it and time it, but I think there was more given. But I also walked away with the fact that maybe they didn't highlight certain things, normal things. Because there was something not good.
Could be.
And there could have been other situations or things, and maybe the family didn't. I don't know. I'm just saying
we all know that you can only go and find out from records that are available.
Where's Mary at? We need Mary. I want to know. Where's Mary at? Because he cut it off too quick on Cierra, and it's like, wait, you're done? Wait, you stopped right here? Wait.
Yeah. There's a reason. I think there's a reason that it stopped right there. Either the records couldn't be found. Or there were things that they felt like, or she felt
could have had an explanation.
Yeah, she didn't want
it. He could have did a better job. The writers. I'm not going to totally put it on him.
Yeah.
Especially regarding the slave schedule. Explain.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. She blame that man in South Carolina. That's the one that said not to put their names on there.
Yes,
exactly. No, that was the South Carolina.
I know it was. I know.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't do it. She did say something interesting, though, that she said she had a greater appreciation for American history now, which I thought was very interesting after all the things that she was finding out.
She also said history is beautiful.
Yeah.
Even with the bad, the good, bad, and the ugly. She said,
right. I thought that was I thought she handled all of that really well. And we don't know, like we said, what else she handled during that interview that we didn't get to see.
So she wasn't like Pharrell when she was hearing anything and had to go take 2 weeks off and to grasp it. Well, and again, I don't know what I expected from her, but not those responses.
Yeah.
Because there was always more questions to ask.
Yeah.
And that's where
Right.
when I'm left hanging, I thought, well, then you didn't do a good job. Well, what I'm saying is you portrayed and you cut it off. So there wasn't enough explanation for me.
For you.
And so I hope the writers are listening and writing this story. Yes, it's TV. Get it. Get that. And we love the show.
Not for a genealogist. This is just for entertainment. Right.
And we're very critical because we work at this 7 days a week.
And we want other people to understand if they want to research their family, that it's not as easy as looking at the slave schedule.
Exactly. And it's a team of people looking and not one individual looking.
Exactly. Yes. Well, I want to finish with saying the DNA connection that she had. Do you guys remember who that was?
Derek Jeter.
Derek Jeter. That was great. That was really cool. And I know that these distances are really far.
But who did Derek Jeter DNA connect on the show with? He showed up on somebody else's.
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Yeah.
So, but lots of, I think if we watch these as genealogists, sometimes we do get frustrated. But I think that if we watch, sometimes we do get some ideas about record groups we hadn't thought of, or places that we could look, or just helps with some ideas. Always helps with other people's, helps my ideas flow when I'm looking how other people are finding their people. And that just kind of helps me get some ideas. And I know that Melissa always wants us to watch for that list of archives at the end to kind of give us some information too, and remind us to go to those libraries and archives, actually visit those places, or if you can't get a hold of those places, call them, email them.
Yeah.
Look at their card catalogs. Look at their card catalogs online to see what they have.
I go online to their websites because a lot of these archives, especially since COVID and during COVID, have digitized and indexed a lot more records, and they're just putting it on without any fanfare, without any announcements, putting them on their websites. Now, when you go to an archive's websites, I'm sorry, and I can say this because I'm an archivist, they don't make it easy to find. And so you're going to have to click, you're going to have to dig, you're going to have to click and dig, but there's more on archives websites than meets the eye. And so don't just go to the front page and go, oh, there's nothing here, and go move on. Dig, dig, dig.
Yep. And then keep going back because they're continuing
because they add more.
Things.
Yes. If they have newsletters or email lists, or sign up for those, because they'll send out a notification saying we've just processed this collection, or here's the finding.
Or social media accounts. Follow their social media accounts.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And you're making such a good point, because I found a Department of Transportation record, and it was 1824, 1825, where the ancestor is petitioning something about a road.
Yes.
Like a survey thing. I would have never found that, but you know where I found it? The Historical Society.
Yeah.
Now, why wouldn't I?
If they have any place where there are records, and it doesn't have to have the word archive in their name or archive on the building. If they have records, they're preserving them, and they're making them available to the public. They are an archive. So when you hear us say the word archive, it is anywhere where there are records.
Holding record.
There you go. Anywhere. Yeah. Anywhere.
And there's an archive out there for everything.
Yes.
This has been a lot of fun. Is there anything that we may have missed on the two guests that y'all had written down that you wanted to bring up? Do you think we caught everything?
I think so.
I just hope they give explanations, and it's any family or when they're talking about it. And I just don't want people walking away and thinking it's that easy.
Right.
I've got 70, 80 some people in 3 years on my UVA project. You
Yeah.
guys understand that, but the average
yeah.
person, what?
So
You've been
true.
for 3 years and you only found 70 descendants? Well,
Yeah.
90% of who I'm looking for is a first name only.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well,
I think I'm doing good.
I think you're doing great. I appreciate y'all
Thank
being here, kick off season 10 of Finding Your Roots, and we will continue and go through the show and talk about the different records and the stories, the very important stories that they're being told that they've never heard of before. And so I think it's a wonderful way for people to learn, get excited about doing their own family history, and a way to say, hey, I want to do this. So let me find some classes and courses and instructors to help me learn how to do it and how to do it correctly so that I can find my people. So this was a good first start, and we look forward to talking with you for the rest of the season. And we would like to hear your comments about the different things we brought up tonight about records and finding records and using them as hints, and what is the biggest find that you found last year? That would be fun for us to know as you were researching. What was the biggest find or the biggest aha? Or what did you discover? Did you discover that you had whatever in your family history that you never knew about before that didn't get passed down to you? So we would love to hear from you, and we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time on GenFriends. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.